Nepal is still struggling to cope with the aftermath of the quake. In recent years, the country has had the highest happiness index in the world, and religious and spiritual belief are also very strong there. But the disaster not only caused huge casualties, it dealt a devastating blow to the country's rich cultural heritage. Before we go to our next panel, let's take a closer look at the cultural cost of the disaster.
An irreparable loss for Nepal. In the heart of Kathmandu, temples and statues dating back to the 1300s have been reduced to rubble. The 9-story Dharahara Tower was a major tourist attraction. Now, only its base remains. State-run Nepal TV reported that at least 90% of public squares, Buddhist stupas, and Hindu temples in the Kathmandu Valley have been flattened. There are 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in the area that lies at a crossroads of the ancient civilizations of Asia. UNESCO is currently trying to gather information on the extent of the destruction. Experts say complete restoration may prove to be impossible. And the cultural loss may also have an economic impact. Tourism is a major source of revenue for the largely agricultural nation, accounting for as much as 30% of its GDP. Healing will take time as Nepal weighs the cost, not just in human lives, but in the damage done to their spiritual and cultural heritage.
It is a very sacred place in Nepal there. For more on this issue, we are joined in our Beijing studio by Mr. Lawrence Brahm, who is the founder of the Himalayan Consensus Institute, which of course is aimed at protecting ethnic diversity, culture, and environment there in Nepal. And also in Washington, D.C., we are joined by Prashad Jha. He is associate editor of Hindustan Times. He's also author of the book Battles of the New Republic, A Contemporary History of Nepal. He's originally coming from Nepal, now working in Washington, D.C. Welcome to both of you gentlemen. This is a very sad day, shall we say, but yes, people are making their efforts. Lawrence, I understand some of your colleagues are actually trapped in the city of Kathmandu. Some of them are Nepalese, some are Europeans. How are they?
We found most of them. We've been in contact with them. One of them, Rajiv Goyal, has actually walked from the countryside the past 24 hours to the city, and he reported to us that everything in the countryside made of cement has collapsed, and animals are now dying on the road. People are desperate because their cows are dying. This is going to become a food crisis, and of course then disease can spread because there's no way to deal with the dead animals. So he's come right in from the city, from the countryside today, and has been able to give us that report. Sujeev Shakya is camping out in Patan, which is his home. He was so much a part of the restoration of the heritage buildings there, the palace, and now he's camping outside with his family in the rubble. And so this is, I think it's heart-wrenching for all of us, but the first immediate concern is are people alive that we can know, and how we can address those who are trapped or those who need immediate help.
We're going to talk about how we are going to address their needs for a moment. And now let me go to Mr. Jha in Washington, D.C. You are a Nepali yourself. Your family is there. How are they? And what have they been describing to you, the situation now in Nepal? Can you communicate with them well?
It took a while when the earthquake first struck on Saturday to communicate with my parents who were there. But we have been able to touch base and talk to them, and they're fine. The problem is that for the last 3 days, aftershocks have continued in Nepal, and these aftershocks are almost independent earthquakes in themselves because they've been pretty severe. So most of the city has spent the last 2 nights out in the open. And it's been cold and it's been raining, and the city just does not have the open spaces and the infrastructure to cope with it. There is now a looming water crisis. There is an electricity crisis. Your essential supplies are now in short storage. So what we are now witnessing is the aftermath, which is pretty brutal. But this is only about Kathmandu. I think I'd like to flag this point that that the epicenter of the earthquake was in Midwest Nepal. A lot of what we don't know yet, there is an information deficit about it, is the extent of destruction in rural Nepal. We know houses have been flattened, rural communities have collapsed, but the casualty figures will go up as we get more information from these relatively remote and inaccessible areas at the moment.
Yes, indeed. A lot of the information coming from the villages at this moment is unknown. We do not exactly know what happened really to the people over there. Lawrence, let me come back to you. Given the very difficult geographical location, the high mountain, many say impassable mountains, and also the aftershock, and some of the other natural challenges. How much do you think the international community can help, and how much should they really try to help?
I'll be very direct. China's in the best position right now to help because of the collective experience of the two earthquakes in Chengdu and in Yushu, Qinghai, because both of these are the same, it's the same network, the Himalayan tectonic plates. And that collective experience, which was so painfully earned, is relevant. Very simple and basic things are needed.
And many of the areas that had earthquakes before are underdeveloped areas as well.
Exactly, it's very similar. And so China can be a first mover on this, can express huge soft power to the world, particularly South Asia, where there are a lot of historic misunderstandings. I think China can be really an effective coordinator on this, particularly coming in with the helicopter power it has to get into Everest, where there's still many people trapped, and really basic things, tents, plastic, tanks for water encatchment. We're in the middle of the rainy season, and now water systems are broken, and you're going to have sewage and drinking water mixed. Nepal normally has a water crisis. Now it's a desperate water crisis, and these are things that can be addressed right away. I think this is where China can actually move ahead of many other countries.
And I think China is moving in that direction at the moment. It's not about the whatever power you have just illustrated. It's really about the humanitarian support that China should provide. More than 60 people, medical team already there, and another 55 on the way, and therefore another 45 on the way. A lot of relief
hospitals.
Materials are also on the way. But Mr. Zhang, let me ask you, even given that the international community, China, the United States, Australia, Japan, India included, have all been offering help. Eventually, how much do you think the Nepalese can rely on the international support or on themselves? If it is the latter, usually it is the latter. What can they rely on at this moment?
I'd like to say that we need the help of the international community. The logic of geography has meant that it was easier for India to move in, and India has also offered a lot of assistance. And I think China, as a close Nepali neighbor, we expect assistance from China, and I think Nepal is grateful for whatever assistance is coming from whichever quarter it is coming from, and I hope this is sustained. You know, this we saw today itself that the Chief Secretary of the Nepal government held a press conference, and he said that the three things that Nepal needs immediately and in abundant quantities are tents, because people are out. We need specialized medical teams, especially orthopedics. We need specialized teams which can deal with collapse, search and rescue teams. So there is a lot that the international expertise can bring into Nepal. But of course, what I think the onus also lies on the Nepal government to coordinate these activities, to be the agency which ensures that there isn't too much duplication that is happening when international effort is coming in, that it's streamlined. Right now, we also see, besides governments and institutions, private citizens all over the world, Nepali diaspora, everybody wants to contribute, and I think this is remarkable. I mean, and we must capitalize on it.
It is.
But the onus is on national civil society, Nepal government to step up its act and to coordinate.
We should have different sides to coordinate, but one of the realities about Nepal, you know this better than I do, Lawrence, that is many of the young, strong labor from Nepal actually go overseas. Some say even a quarter of the population actually are working outside the country. So they leave women, children, and also the elderly back at home. This makes things even more difficult.
Well, women are an important part of the workforce.
Of course.
But what right now is needed is what our colleague just said, mobile hospitals. China and Nepal have an agreement actually on mobile hospitals, but now we have a problem because Kathmandu Airport is very limited and it's in the city center. So even if you deliver to Kathmandu Airport, how is it able to get up to other parts of the country?
And we've been hearing throughout the day about the opening and closing of this specific airport because of aftershocks.
Pokhara is very critical, and actually China's already begun a runway in Pokhara for small planes, and if that can be accelerated quickly, that can be a landing landing area and to get relief and medical to other parts of the country quickly,
Everything,
avoiding the clog and the problems of the Kathmandu airport.
everything is racing against the clock and against the time at this moment. But one has also to say, Mr. Jha, that the international community has enormous amount of respect for your country and your people, because your people are well known for their perseverance and their bravery, given the very hard natural conditions that you guys are living in. And also, it is a country rich in religious traditions. And I want to brief you, sir, Mr. Jha, that the Chinese Buddhist Association also sent in their support, 2 million yuan, not much, but yet they are trying to send their blessings to the people in Nepal. And also, they try to express their support for your people. Having said that, though, how much do you think the spirit of perseverance and also the very strong tradition of being optimistic at this moment, Mr. Jha, will be able to help your people to at least endure some of the very difficult situations right now?
I think that's a good question. I think, tradition works both ways. Sometimes tradition ends up making you fatalistic, and perhaps we should not have been as fatalistic about, we always knew that the big earthquake was coming and we should have prepared harder as both a state and society. But you're right, tradition also has its strengths, and people who particularly live in the hills have lived in very difficult circumstances. They've had to, as you yourself mentioned, many people in the millions actually go out of the country and work in difficult circumstances, and so there is an enduring this is a test of human spirit, and this is just the beginning. It will take a lot, but I think Nepal has suffered many tragedies in the last 20 years. Please remember that. We have gone through a lot of political turbulence. We went through a 10-year civil war where 16,000 people died. We went through the massacre of a royal family. We have gone through instability where there has been a change of government every year. And there is a lot of rural deprivation. So it is a country that has suffered, and I think Nepal now does not need any more tragedies. What we need is to get together, to sink our differences,
right,
and to work to revive, rebuild, and get back the national spirit. And I think Nepal is capable of it with the help of the international community.
Lawrence, you and I were talking before we come on today's show. One of the things about the Nepalese is not only they're spiritually strong, but also they are very independent. So at this moment, it is a time that the international community should support as much as possible. But how to do that in a graceful way and how to do that in the most respectful way, of course, is also extremely important.
Well, Nepal's a nation that has never been conquered by another nation. They're the most fierce fighters in the world. And they're very fierce. They have great diversity and independence, even within the different ethnic groups
Absolutely.
and castes. And so their military is going to be able to handle the situation, handle their own people. What they need is equipment. They need technical. They need these aspects because their own infrastructure after 10-year insurgency is broken. Electricity, water are normally not functioning, right. Telecommunications. And so this is where they're going to really need that help. Generators, energy, this is absolutely essential at this time. But in terms of managing the situation on the ground, I think they're going to be able to do that. Also, it's a very unique country because it's a place where Hindu and Buddhism is completely merged, and that's a philosophy that's about reducing suffering and compassion. So if you combine that with the toughness of the people, I think that they're going to be very resilient and rebuild their country.
Right. Mr. Jha, I've been hearing from my friends who are reporters, been going into the region and also through their friends on the ground, understanding that foreign travelers in Nepal, now many of them are trapped as well. The locals open up their own little, very simple plastic tent for foreigners to come in and enjoy their very simple food, the only thing that they have left on their hands. So with that, let me pay a lot of respect to you and also your people. Having said that though, how can foreign governments at this moment coordinate their efforts to save their own citizens while at the same time in parallel, working with the Nepalese government and the army to do as much as they can? Mr. Jha.
I think you really have spotted the problem. I mean, the primary citizen of the primary duty of a state is to protect its own citizens. So I think we would understand completely if a state, if a foreign state wants to rescue citizens who are trapped in Nepal at the moment or who are in Nepal, and we have seen that happening. You know, the Indians have been running several air missions to get their citizens back. We just saw the Bhutanese Prime Minister himself come to Nepal and pay his condolences and take Bhutanese citizens back to Bhutan, and other international and other countries have set up helplines in their embassies and are reaching out to their citizens. So that's, I think, completely legitimate, and I'm sure Nepal would be happy to assist in any way it can. But as you said, the scale of the crisis is internal. It is Nepalese who have suffered the most, and in terms of humanitarian aid, I think what Nepal needs is aid, international assistance and aid for the Nepalese who are suffering. And I think both those, as you said, parallel processes have to go in parallel. The only suggestion I would have is that this has to be, for my own government actually, is that the Nepal government has to play more effectively the role of a coordinating agency. I would also suggest that the international community should also perhaps also coordinate. I mean, there will be some countries which will be able to do more, some countries will do less, but maybe Friends of Nepal group kind of thing can be set up where some countries can take the lead and together help Nepal.
Well, this is a crisis, and therefore everybody is trying to struggle to help at the same time to do what they can in order to coordinate to make it in an orderly way. We want to thank you on this very important day, the two of you, for being with us. I know both of you are dealing with the crisis at the moment while we are speaking. Thank you so much.